E360 TV proudly presents messages of inspirational stories. Live streaming now to millions of devices, including Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, Android TV, YouTube Live, Facebook Live, with your host, Donna Guinwa, producer and host, Jim Grant, producer and host, along with Michaela Vidal, administrator and host, and Gaia Guinwa Balconi Wada, editor-in-chief. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. The Messages of Inspirational Stories is so proud to be here and have you watching us. We're very, very thankful and grateful for that. And this week, we've been talking about changing your mental vision. That is very, very important. It helps you clean out the cobwebs of your thinking. Yesterday, Donna had the day off, and today, Donna's got so many things going on there at her house. She has to take this morning off, or today off, excuse me. But we had Emerson Brantley fill in for her yesterday, and Emerson is back with us today. Oh my goodness. You are in for a treat. Let me welcome Emerson to the stage here. Hey, sir, how you doing?
Hey, Jim.
So glad to have you here with us, Emerson. You're our director of marketing. But most importantly, you're our friend and you're part of our family.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. That's easy for you to say. Yesterday, we talked a lot about, various things on the show. And some of the things that you brought up were just simply grassroots things. They were down to earth. They were things that were easy to understand. There's so much more to life than just thinking positive.
Yeah.
And you covered that very well. And today, I know you wanted to talk about some things specifically, so I'm just going to let you go ahead and open up the show, my man.
Well, one of the things that we talked about yesterday was the thinking outside the box idea. Mm-hmm. And people get that sometimes, I think, a little twisted around. Like, they're way out there, they're way outside the box.
Oh, yeah.
But, we've all heard about getting outside of comfort zone. Mm-hmm. As long as you're in your comfort zone, you really are kind of stuck. Mm-hmm. And pushing yourself beyond that envelope, getting outside of that box is where growth comes from. And that it doesn't matter if you are, going for some type of degree or field of study, or an athlete, or trying to perform at a job, or growing a company. All of those things. Mm-hmm. If somebody is wanting to extend their relationship or relationships, it takes getting outside of the box. All of those things are areas where we push ourselves a little bit. But the more that we do, just like any muscle, the more that we do, the more natural, the easier it becomes. Mm-hmm. So, one of the things that I wanted to talk about is, okay, we get outside the box, and it's the creative thinking process. Mm-hmm. We all would like to be able to have, a little manual for anything that we wanted to do that said, okay, here's step one, a YouTube video for anything, any hack of life, anything that we needed to accomplish. It says, okay, step one, you do this, and the little mouse goes across the screen and clicks here and it goes here. But, that's not the way things actually work. And creativity, which is something that Hill and Clem Stone, who we were talking about mm-hmm. yesterday, both talked quite a bit about. There are principles that are involved in it. One of the things that's important is trusting the process itself. Mm-hmm. And mm-hmm. not knowing where to start is often where we have to trust that process the most. And we have to just start, or, commence to begin to get ready to start.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But in writing, and as you know, and as our viewers know, I've done awful lot of writing over the years in marketing. And in writing, we have to start with a blank screen or a blank piece of paper.
That's right.
And at some point, we have to put down that first letter or keystroke or word, and then the first sentence, and then the next sentence, and the paragraph, the next paragraph, and complete the first page. And somewhere in that actual process of just doing the creative work, there's a kind of a symbiotic relationship. And I don't want to be talking over the heads of some of audience members or assuming that they don't understand what I mean by that. But it's a relationship where each part is feeding off of the other part. And that blank screen, or for an artist, the blank canvas, starts out silent, and everything is in your head. And you're trying to gel that together. And you put down that first letter, that first word, that first sentence, or in the case of an artist, you pick out that first paintbrush. You mix your paint, you get the kind of colors you're kind of picturing, and then you decide where that first piece of paint is going to go.
Yeah.
On that completely blank canvas. Now, the miraculous thing in the creative process is that by the time a canvas like this is completed, that first splot that you put down may not even be visible. It may not even be part of it. But that was the genesis. That was the starting point. And that requires trust in the process.
Yeah.
Now, we've all heard interviews, where they're interviewing, saying, a famous author, and they say, Jim, man, that great story. I can't believe, the way you had him dug down that alley at the last minute. I just thought that was so creative. What's John and Susan going to do in your next book? And the author that they're interviewing kind of smiles and says, well, something along the lines of, you know what? I don't even know myself. They haven't told me. And we all kind of laugh. He's being coy. But the truth is in the creative process, we often don't know where it's going.
Yes. You're exactly right. Yeah. Because you got to trust yourself. You got to trust your knowledge and trust the fact that you're not in this alone. If you have an open mind, you don't make, these decisions, which really is a mental box. The energy will open up doors. You may be trying to get through this door, but the energy it's kind of like the little hinges that swings open bigger doors.
Yeah.
And as you were talking there, Emerson, about the first paint stroke and how it may not be visible and all that, it kind of reminded me of a foundation of a home. We know when people build a home, they build the foundation first. But when you see the home in a picture or you ride by, you don't see the foundation, but it's there. And that's having the courage to say, I'm going to lay my foundation. I'm going to build upon this and just go and grow from there and be flexible in your thinking.
Yeah.
That's
flexible is way too rigid. We talked about that.
Yeah. We mentioned that yesterday.
And, if you look at a historic site, an archaeological site, all you see are the foundation. And we have to try to imagine what that foundation supported and what the room was like. And was it one story? Was it two story? How many people lived in there? Where, how did they? And it's difficult going backwards in that process where you're just looking at a foundation and having a real clear idea of what the entire structure would have looked like. That's backwards engineering. What we have to do is be willing to trust when that cornerstone is laid that this beautiful home is going to end up being the result. Now, and what's amazing, this is just amazing, Jim. and many of our viewers may know this. If you look at the great cathedrals in Europe, they did not have blueprints.
Wow, that's right.
They did not have all the tools in science that we have today. Now, certainly for some of them, it was a problem. They built them too high and too narrow, and the things collapsed or things like that. That was a trial by error. But the thing is, they only had the vision. The pyramids.
Yeah.
The pyramids had, I think, and one of our viewers may correct us on this. They had a plumb level on a string,
right,
for vertical,
right,
and they had a square. And I don't think they had any other implements to be able to determine it. Now, they figured how you could take a square and you could sight something and but they didn't have any of the materials that we have now. The hardest metal that they had was copper, which is pretty soft metal. And that's what they used to cut the limestone with, was copper. So you're talking about people who were taking completely from their head to the finished product and having to trust a process that nobody in the world had ever done before.
Oh, yeah. And, one of the things that always amazed me, ladies and gentlemen, is how back in the early days when the Vikings would go sailing on their ships and all that, they didn't have modern technology.
No.
They didn't have anything. All they had was, just a device. I'm trying to think of the name of the device they had. And they had the moon and stars and that sort of thing.
They had that. And then I think the astrolabe was developed where they could sight.
Right.
But what's interesting in that process is it wasn't until I think the 1700s that the chronograph clock was developed. Everyone knows a chronograph watch has, here's your time in New York, here's your time here. But that's because we don't need them anymore the way they did then.
Yeah.
The problem that they had was it was relatively easy to sail north and south.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. East and west created a bigger problem. Because east and west, they're crossing what we call today time zones. So the sun is coming up at a different time here than it is in England.
Right.
And so with the chronograph, they were able to keep track as they went along. And that's when we began getting the concept of longitude, not just latitude.
Right.
And now they could actually begin to plot. In the early days, they could end up landing hundreds of miles away on a next voyage from where they came the first time.
Yeah, they sure could.
And it was a huge problem. It was huge. And it crippled our understanding of the world and maps and the globe and the relationship of countries and being able to have consistent shipping and things like that for centuries.
It sure did.
And incidentally, just as another sidebar in terms of creativity, a huge contest was put out by I think the Admiralty in London to develop a way to be able to track longitude. And the person who ended up actually coming up with the solution wasn't a scientist, wasn't a thinker, philosopher, and he was just a tinkerer. And the Admiralty was so, irritated by the fact that this guy he was a nobody. That literally, it was decades of battles for his family to get the award that was due to him for solving this huge problem. So it's, it doesn't, we have to trust the process.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Because, it's kind of like the recent horse race up in Kentucky. Rich, what was the horse's name? I'm trying to think of it. Rich, I can't remember the horse's name off the top of my head, but he wasn't even supposed to be there.
Right.
He just got in at the last moment because one horse had to drop out. They had 20 horses. That's why his number was 21. And he was an 80-1 long shot. And nobody, I mean, who would pick an 80-1 shot to win the Kentucky Derby? And
somebody who's sitting pretty right now. I'd say they're sitting real pretty right now.
Yeah, they giggled all the way to the bank on that deal, didn't they? But, it's just amazing how, a horse that, was just on standby as a filler. That's what he was doing. He was just a filler horse in a stable. If someone can't go, well, come on, you're in, and that just like a player sitting on the bench in a baseball team. That's just, a bench warmer. And the manager says, well, we had one of the left fielder, for example, he twisted his ankle and he's limping around. You got to go play left field. Well, they're off the bench and right into the game. And that's exactly what happened to those folks with the horse. And it was just a wonderful, everybody loves the underdog, don't they?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, I think of the movie Rudy.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if our viewers have ever seen it. It's a good movie. You should go and see it. It's the true story of a real underdog, and his dream was to play for Notre Dame, but he was too short, too light. He wasn't fast, and all of the family said, "You need to come work at the factory." And he said, "I'm going to go to Notre Dame," and he ended up cleaning the locker rooms. He did everything he could to be able to go to Notre Dame. And like the last game of his last season, the coach puts him in and he runs a touchdown.
Oh yeah.
It's that's another element of it though. Trusting the process is one, being willing to think bigger outside of the box, and being relaxing. I think it's a big part of it all, Jim, is learning to be at peace and relax with that. I'll call it the discomfort zone, with being outside of the comfort zone.
Right.
Learning to relax there is a huge part of it. And trusting the process is a big part of that.
It really is. And as you're talking, one of the things that comes to my mind is that inside mentally, how do you visualize yourself? Do you visualize yourself as someone that can do something, or subconsciously or in the back of your mind, do you really feel that you're handicapped? Some people feel like, or they have doubts. Yeah, I want to think positive. Yeah, I want to do this. But deep down inside, the real you feel like you're either handicapped or you have doubts. And that's where your creative vision and organized thinking, plus, as W. Clement Stone and Napoleon Hill covered in their book, keep your minds on the things that you want and off the things you don't want. You don't want to be handicapped. You don't want any doubts in your mind. Where's the profit in that?
Yeah.
All it does is enslave you, and it holds you back, and it slams the door shut on your pathway of life that you were pre-created to go down. I mean, when you were created for a specific pathway for people you'll meet in your lifetime as you go down through a pathway of life. And you got to, it's kind of like Darryl Green said, you got to be ready. When Darryl Green was playing with, he went to college, and he was just, he didn't get a scholarship or anything because Darryl Green played defensive back for the Washington Redskins. He was a small guy, but he was fast. And he went to Texas, I forget, over here in Texas, A&M or A&I it was, in Prairie View, Texas. So he came from a very small team, school. And he was told, because he went out and tried out, and he was told by the Washington Redskins, if you're still there in the 7th round or whatever, we're going to pick you. And Darryl says, yeah, right. And then it was announced that the Washington Redskins had picked him. And his thing was he was always taught by his dad, by his coaches, all the way up. When you're called upon, you need to show up.
Mm-hmm.
So the moral of that story is when opportunity comes your way, you better be mentally prepared to show up. And that means you got to leave the doubts. You got to get rid of the doubts. You got to get rid of the mental handicaps. You got to clean out the cobwebs of your thinking, because you've been called on for a mission and a cause much bigger than you. And that's just the way life, and everybody in life has a specific calling, a specific cause. You have certain gifts and talents that I don't have or Emerson doesn't have. That's how special you are. So you need to have the self-discipline to trust yourself and trust the process that Emerson's been talking about.
Well, and there's an old adage of familiarity breeds contempt.
Oh,
now,
yeah.
Normally is applied or used when he's talking about relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Where you begin to take things for granted in a relationship, and you really don't hold the high regard there. But who is the number one relationship in your life that you are the most familiar with, that you have lived with 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days of the year?
Mm-hmm.
It's you, it's yourself. And so we're most familiar with ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the lesson in that, or the danger in that, you might want to say, is not taking ourselves with contempt because of that familiarity. Mm-hmm. And here's what I mean. Imagine you have a friend, you're at a party, and one of the guests sits down at a grand piano and just starts playing some of those beautiful music, just whatever, a beautiful Gershwin piece, or some beautiful play, and they're just running up and down the keyboard, and people are gathering around, having their drinks, and they're clapping when it's all over. And you go up to them and say, oh gosh, I wish I could play piano like you play piano. That was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And the person looks at you and goes, well, if you had Miss Johnson from the time you were 7 years old hitting your hand with a ruler every time you hit a note wrong, you'd be able to play just like I do.
Isn't that the truth?
But it's not Mrs. Johnson, because she could have hit my hand until the cows came home. The inner spark, the gift, the talent, the skill, the vision, the understanding, all of those things are unique. Mm-hmm. But the person doesn't see that in themselves. Mm-hmm. They don't see what you see. Mm-hmm. And we all have people who come up to us and pay us compliments, and who share how much something meant to them. And,
yeah.
I always try after I speak or present anywhere, or training or whatever, I always try to be gracious and simply, and this is a lesson for a lot of people, I think, viewing us, to simply be able to smile, look them in the eye, and say, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Amen.
Not yeah, but.
Mm-hmm.
Just
exactly.
Thank you. I'm so glad you came up and shared that with me. Thank you. Mm-hmm. And receive it, because they're seeing that in you. Mm-hmm. And you're saying that made a difference to them. They recognize it. Trust it.
Oh.
Trust it. And simply saying thank you. Mm-hmm. It's like you go up to somebody and you say, God, Lee, man, that's an amazing looking suit on you. And you say, oh, this whole thing, man, are you kidding? I've had this thing for 12 years. Holy Toledo. I've had to replace the buttons on it 3 times. Amazing, it still holds together. I got it on sale for $29. Holy cow. And what we're doing is we're dismissing,
Mm-hmm.
we're holding it in contempt. We're
Yes.
not seeing it. And what they're saying to us is, wow, that looks so good. I had one jacket. It had a window pane design on it. Some of our viewers will know what that means. It was a real simple, very faint one. It was a navy blue, and I used it as a traveling jacket because it traveled really well. I could take it on a plane and I could wear it. And inevitably, when you do as much traveling as we have, Jim, inevitably, sooner or later, you're going to have bags that are delayed or get lost or whatever. So I would always make sure I had enough emergency with me. And part of it was this blue blazer.
Mm-hmm.
I must have been complimented on that one blazer 200 times.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one I found on sale off the rack.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't hand tailored or anything like that. I mean, it was, they tailored the length of the sleeves, but I mean, it was an off the rack suit.
Mm-hmm.
And, to learn to just simply be able to say, thank you.
Yes.
With our daughters, this was a big lesson that my wife and I both worked with our daughters on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Was to just learn to say thank you. Be grateful. Yeah. Thank you. You don't even have to believe it. You can believe they're stroking you, but just say thank you.
Mm-hmm.
No, but
I struggled with that myself big time, and I'll go through the story kind of short. I suffer from glossophobia for decades. Glossophobia is the fear of public speaking. And I've had people tell me, Jim, you had a fear of public speaking? I avoid it like the plague. And what changed my world for me, since I was being stubborn, I was resisting the path I was supposed to be going in. My military unit I was assigned to had disbanded. They had shut it down. So I had to find a new home. The only place available for me was with a Army USA. Is that your phone or mine? Yeah. It's with a USARF school. That's the old schools in the Army Reserve that they were a unit full of instructors. So I went there as a finance NCO, but they told me, okay, the finance NCO has to also become an instructor. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe I can find some way to wiggle past that, but I couldn't. So I had to go through the instructor training course, had to do that. And then the first summer camp that I went on, we had 8 instructors, 2 per class. We had a total of 107 students. So each class was huge. And so I'm real focused on writing my notes, and I'm real focused on giving the best presentation I can. Then the next year, because I struggled all the way through that summer camp, I'll be honest with you. The next year, some students came up. They saw me in the mess hall, and they said, "Oh, sorry, Grant, are you going to be teaching this class?" I said, "No, I'm going to be instructing, the same one that I did last year." "Oh, geez, we were hoping we'd have you as our instructor because you were the best instructor we had." You know what went through my brain? And I'm telling you the truth. You got to be kidding. I was that pitiful mentally in what Emerson was saying about just say, thank you. That's very kind of you to say that. But I mean, I didn't expect that any more than as you can imagine. Because the only reason why I talked or spoke slowly and phonetically was I had been taught that would help calm me down. And they thought I was intelligent. Boy, did I snow them. But that's a true story. But it enabled me to develop my calling in life. And it's led me down many paths because Emerson, when you met me, you probably never figured I had a fear of public speaking one time because he kept telling me to shut up.
No, it's a funny thing. And in a similar vein, one of my early jobs, I had to do sales. Well, I did sales. It was part of the job. And one of the things that was there was a lot of cold, what's called cold prospecting in it, which isn't the best way to do it. But I had a couple of different issues. One was at functions that I would be at. I'm generally an outgoing person, but I hesitated going up and meeting people. You know what I mean, like at networking things, just walking up and starting a conversation with somebody you don't know. The other thing was calling people cold on the telephone.
Oh, yeah.
And I used to walk back and forth in front of the telephone. I called it the 90-pound telephone back then. I'd walk it back and forth in front of that phone, pick it up about 12 times before I'd finally dial it. And it took a while. It took a while to figure out, you know what? The worst they can do is hang up. It's okay.
Yeah.
And today, if I needed to call the governor, I could probably call the governor. It doesn't mean they'd pick up. It just means the comfort level changes as you push through some of those things. And walking up to people, I actually did a thing. If I didn't have appointments at lunch, I would go and sit down in a restaurant somewhere and order a glass of tea or a cup of coffee and say I was waiting for somebody, which I was. I just didn't know who they were yet. And I'd wait when somebody walked in that looked to be a good, sharp prospect or whatever. I don't even remember what it was I was looking for, but I would watch everyone walking in. I would go over and introduce myself. You look so familiar to me. My name's Emerson Brantley. What's yours? And I'd hold out my hand. And it became a game almost for me. The objective for me was, do I get everybody had business cards, that. The objective for me was, do I get to exchange business cards with them? And then sometimes I'd call them later and sometimes I wouldn't. It depends on if they really were somebody who was a prospect for the work that I was doing or not. But the thing is, I pushed myself outside of that envelope, outside of that box, outside of that comfort zone, until it was not something that was a problem. And I am generally outgoing. I am generally extrovert, but nevertheless, for me, doing something like that out of the blue with somebody was outside of my comfort zone. And it was something that the only thing that I knew to do, and I don't know how I came up with it, but was to put myself in that situation and just keep doing it until it just became an easy thing. And people think that it was always easy, but it wasn't always easy.
No, it's not, because many years ago I was involved with a grassroots cause, good cause and all that, and I volunteered to cold call on businesses. And I'm telling you, opening that door, walking into the front door of a business, not knowing what's on the other side, is intimidating.
Oh yeah.
And asking to speak to either the owner or the head of the business, because they was the only two who could write a check. You didn't ask for the manager. Man said, I'm the manager. I can help you. They can't even pay the power bill. Okay. But, then getting the opportunity to sit down and say, this is what we're doing. This is how we're doing it, et cetera. Give them the nuts and bolts of it. Pause. And what was amazing to me, of course, I got a lot of no's, but my closing ratio was 2 out of 6, 1/3. And everybody thought that was great. And I thought, well, I thought I should be better than that. But here's the secret. The very first time that I walked out with a check in my hand, I felt like $1 million, because I had conquered that one fear. And then I got to where, I could just open the door and, hey, you folks doing today? I just came in today to see if all you guys showed up for work and or awake. I start out with a joke to break the ice, because it would calm me down and put them at ease.
Yeah.
And But before I was as stiff if I was starched walking in like a toy soldier. Hi, my name's Jim Grant. So what? You have really taught me about those two words. So what?
So what? That's right.
Yeah.
Well, everybody. I actually did an entire sales piece one time built around this concept.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody knows Babe Ruth was, in his time, the home run king.
Yes.
What most people don't realize, and this was the substance of what I used as a core for this sales letter, what most people don't realize is that he was also the strikeout king.
Yeah.
That he had more strikeouts than anybody in the league. And that's because when he stepped up to the plate, every single time he swung, his intent was for it to go over the fence.
Oh, yeah.
And if he missed it and it was a strike, or tipped it and it was a ball, you know what? The next one, he swung just as hard. So the idea of going outside of the comfort zone,
Mm-hmm.
putting everything that you have into it, that's another key concept. Now, I'm going to step back from this just a second, because this is a danger zone.
Mm-hmm.
The danger zone is perfection, because perfection is paralysis.
Oh, yeah.
And so when we talk about starting a painting, or starting a relationship, or starting a project of any type, the final version of it, what it turns into, will be different in many ways than what you imagined in the beginning. When do you know to stop? That's part of trusting the process too. Perfection is paralysis.
Mm-hmm.
There is no 100%. There is no such thing as perfection.
Mm-hmm.
It will never be something. You can come back to anything you have ever seen or done or experienced in your life. You can come back around to it. And I do this regularly with old sales pieces and marketing pieces that I've written. And so sometimes they're so good, they bring tears to my eyes, Jim. I just start getting choked up just thinking about it. But at the same time, as I'm reading through it, I'll find some awkward sentence or something that didn't fit, or I should have had this up here instead of down here.
Yeah.
Because there is no 100%.
Mm-hmm. You're right.
And we don't want to shift over into perfection is paralysis.
Mm-hmm.
So I give that out to everybody as well.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And, that's been one thing that's really handicapped me in my life, wanting to do something and it's not quite right. So I can't send it out now. I've got to work on it a little bit more. I'm going to sleep on it tonight. I wake up fresh in the morning, yada, da, 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 da. And guess what? It doesn't matter. All you got to do is put it out there. And then you make a list of what went well.
Mm-hmm.
And then you make a list of lessons learned, not what went wrong, but the lessons that you learned, because you learn more from your lessons than you do anything else.
Yeah.
And that is if you're open-minded and honest with yourself.
Now, part of what you said is a very good plan, though. Mm-hmm. And that is, whenever you do a project, whenever you're involved in something and you brought it to a place, set it off to the side. Come back around to it. Sleeping on it's a great thing to do. Sometimes you don't have the time to do that. Set it aside for a couple of hours and then go back to it. And now go through it with fresh eyes. Not to be perfect, but because we can get so ingrained in it that we're not seeing, we're getting into a different box then. We're not seeing stuff that if we simply set it off to the side and come back to it.
Mm-hmm.
See, this isn't working harder, more, doing, not happy with it, got to make it right. That's not what that's about. When you set it off to the side, you disengage that process. Now, when you come back to it, your eyes and your mind are looking at it with a little bit of a fresh perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And you see, often, I'll take the sales letter as an example. I need to move this paragraph up here and bring this one down here. And, that transition's a little rough. Let's change that to this. And I think So at that point, we have to be willing to let it go.
Mm-hmm.
Because perfection is paralysis, and we don't want to get into that trap. But
Mm-hmm.
coming back at it with fresh eyes, with fresh mind, sleeping on it if you can.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you the number of 4 a.m. Brilliant insights that I've waken up with when I went to bed because of a project I was working on.
Mm-hmm.
But swinging back around to it when we're not just engrossed in it. Working under a deadline is especially challenging,
Mm-hmm.
because it's like you got to get it out by X. And sometimes we work right up to X.
Mm-hmm.
Back off from X. If it has to be out by 5 o'clock, knock off at 2. Come back around a couple of hours later, go through it one last time.
Mm-hmm.
Because you see things you didn't see. Not to make it perfect, but because you need that fresh approach to it. And this is I'm going to share something that's real interesting. In marketing, there have been many times where I've put together a marketing campaign and I've passed it around an office for people to look at or send it off to different people to see. And inevitably, the one that everybody hates is the one that just knocks the doors off of everything. And the one that everybody loves is the one that's a dud. I learned along the way that your intuition, and Hill talks about some of this.
Yes.
Your intuition is something to trust.
Mm-hmm.
And I've said this in one of our other shows. In terms of sales and marketing, it's not about what you think. It's about what you feel. And people can disparage that and talk about, well, you got to get the emotional bullet points. It's not about that.
Hmm.
And I'm going to step back, and I think maybe some of the female participants in our audience will appreciate this. That's largely a male-dominated kind of a attitude that you gotta play their emotions. That's baloney. It's not the emotional, it's the intuitive part of this. So feeling, reasoning, advanced part of the brain, not the logical part of the brain.
Yeah.
That's the ancient. That crawled out of the swamp and in the first predator slime. That what we call the analytical brain. It's the fight or flight. If a lightning bolt hit nearby, it jumped. What I'm talking about is the reasoning, intuitive, feeling, thinking brain. And that's the more advanced brain. So trust that intuitive ability that you have, and don't necessarily take it to heart if what you're doing or working on isn't something that everybody else gets. I think I said this in our last show. How many of you have ever told a joke that you were just snorting through your nose? It was so funny. And you're telling it to a group of friends at a party or something, and they're going, I don't get it. Guess you had to be there. And you go, no, you don't get it. You start to tell it again. They're not going to get it, okay? But you get it. Trust that innate ability, and you can step outside of the box. You can lay things down. You can come back to them an hour, 5 hours, or the next day. And if you trust that intuition, it is your best friend.
Oh, yeah, it really is. And, I'm a firm believer in having some fresh eyes and getting some good feedback. Now, feedback is very, very critical because you don't want someone to give you a cotton candy answer and pat you on the back and make you feel good. That has no value. True feedback will give you good input of things that you either you expanded on, or you did not cover well enough, or you missed the clarity of the message.
But at the end of the day, trust yourself. Trust your intuition in it.
Exactly.
And if you're wrong, you'll find out. And that's how you learn to trust your intuition more, because, what's the old thing? How How do you avoid mistakes? You avoid mistakes through experience. How do you get experience? By making mistakes, right?
That's true. That's
Right.
so true. I like that. Yeah, because it's, if you make a mistake, is Emerson likes to taught me to say those two words, so what? Just
Okay.
say, hey, folks, I made a mistake here, and I just want to
Screwed
let
up.
you know that I'm aware of it and working on it or whatever. But people appreciate honesty. People appreciate the fact that you're just like them. You can make a mistake, but at least they really appreciate the fact that you had the courage to own it. You
Don't you
didn't.
wish more companies and more politicians
Oh, I was just thinking
and
about politicians. Hey, if something goes wrong, they go into damage control. Who can we blame? Okay, who?
Yep.
Oh, yeah, we got them over there. We can blame.
Let's double down on it. Never admit you're wrong.
Yeah,
But that's a weakness. That's a real weakness.
it really is. And while you were talking, I had to go back and do a little bit of research of what you said about Babe Ruth. Of course, everybody knows he hit 714 home runs during his career. And a lot of people don't know that early on in his career, he was just a pitcher.
Yeah.
Which means he only played once every 3 or 4 days. But the number of strikeouts, 1,330. He struck out almost twice as many times as he hit a home run. But the thing of it is with that, and the moral of that story, and the reason I bring it up is because, as Emerson covered very well, when Babe went up to the plate, he didn't have those doubts in his mind. Oh, boy, this guy struck me out and struck me out more than any other pitcher. And no, he went up there with, if I connect with this ball, I'm swinging for the fence.
And I'm taking the skin off that ball.
Because I'll tell you right now, I'll guarantee you, I honestly believe this, that no pitcher ever said, well, Babe Ruth, huh? Let me see if he can hit my pitches. They were probably thinking they were probably, to themselves, please, Lord, help me throw some good pitches here to get him out, ground out, strike out, or whatever, because he was a definite threat.
Yeah.
He definitely was. So the moral of that story is be like Babe. You know good and well when he went up there to the plate, he wasn't focused on that pitcher that had struck him out more than any other pitcher. He wasn't focused on the fact he had struck out more than anybody else ever played the game. He was focused on how can I connect with this ball and do something positive for my team. Even if it's just a single, that's a hit.
That one ball was going to go over the fence if he had anything to do with it.
There you go. And I love that story. It's a very encouraging story because he just, it's kind of like Sam Snead, I think it was, said one time, golfers, stop all that thinking. You're going to make some bad shots when you're playing 18 holes of golf. Okay, that was one of the bad shots I want to make. I got it out of the way. Now I'm ready for a good shot. Rather than let it prey on your mind and make you doubt yourself and double check everything, because that's what we do naturally. That's natural. But it's also very paralyzing to us.
There's so many examples of it, and Michael Phelps, the swimmer, who did so amazing a few years back at the Olympics. What's interesting in that is a single, the person that he was closest to, a single turn of their head gave the delay in time that allowed him to break the records.
Wow.
They literally, they were swimming, they were doing, and a lot has been made of it. Literally, a turn of the head was enough to delay their own forward growth.
Wow.
And he ended up becoming, I don't remember how many gold medals he got. I know you're looking it up. You're looking it up to check on me right now, Jim.
No, but it's.
I don't remember how many gold medals he got.
Yeah.
But the thing is, that story too was always something that was very meaningful to me, because would he have won? Would he have won if he had not been looking over his shoulder? This opponent, maybe not. maybe not. But the thing is, that nanosecond took him off of where he was going, and what he needed to be doing in it. And Phelps didn't slow down at that moment. Now Phelps may have still won, who knows? But it's been a real interesting thing. Much has been made of that. It's that notion though that when we talk about eye on the goal, too often we talk about goal setting, throwing some dart against the wall. This is what we're going to be at by this time. When we're going to do this, we're going to do that. We're going to do the other. And when we were talking in the other show about strategy before tactics, it's getting that 40,000 foot view. And a lot of those little specific things aren't the important thing, because you don't know what you don't know. And you only know what you know. And there's all sorts of variables. Now, those variables don't mean that what you're wanting to do is not achievable. But what's more important is that it's believable to you. Because as he'll put it, whatever the mind of man, or Clem Stone actually is the one who quoted this, whatever your mind can
conceive
and believe, it can achieve. And everything around us that we see, unless you're living in a cave, in which case all you would have would be this computer, I guess. But everything around us that we see in our modern world, everything from the clothes you're wearing to the house that you're in to the screen in front of you, the technology to make it happen, everything, without exception that we see around us began as a thought, began as a concept,
an idea.
Okay, and if you want to ask me about plants and about okay, let's not go into the faith and religious side of it, but if you wanted to do that, you would find that that's a principle that was from Genesis on,
right?
As far as things being conceived and spoken and created. But beyond that, in our own world, our own physical life, anything at all that is around us, the chair in front of you first started as a thought.
Yes, it did.
Somebody said. We've all seen the caveman riding the stone wheel, right? Somebody actually came up with the idea of a wheel at some point. Figuring out that fire isn't something you had to wait for lightning to strike something and then carry it from place to place, but you might be able to actually create it, changed everything.
Oh, yeah. Because
on and on and on and on and on. It all began as a thought,
an idea.
And it was something that was developed, and I can almost assure you, any example that you want to pull out of your hat, there were naysayers and there were people laughing and ridiculing whoever it was who was trying to develop them.
Yeah, because when you mentioned that about the whoever the person was invented a wheel, there wasn't anything round that gave them an idea. I mean, that just came out of the clear blue, because can you think of any animal that rode around on wheels or had wheels for feet or anything? I mean, it's just amazing. Evidently,
people use logs and things like that to roll stuff, but you had to take one log and move it up and then carry it up in front, and another log and carry it up in front. But the idea of creating something that would be a wheel that you attach to something that you would roll with, and the rest is.
Well, like at the turn of the century, the 20th century, when cars started coming on the scene, there were a lot of horse and buggy, not buggy makers for horse-drawn carriages and all that.
Right.
But there were a lot of those people who thought, this, how many, we've been making carriages and carts and, wagons for horses for thousands of years, and these things are not, they're not going to compete with us. And that old world thinking, well, you know what happened there.
Well, in my own life, in going back to 1993,
Mm-hmm.
I was a VP of marketing with a company, and I wanted to go to this internet marketing conference.
Mm-hmm.
Now, 93, the World Wide Web is recognized as being birthed in 1994. That was when
Mm-hmm.
Netscape came out. You had a graphic user interface so you could see colors and everything else on your
Mm-hmm.
screen. Before that was all text, pretty
Mm-hmm.
much. I mean, you could transmit photos if you had CompuServe or Prodigy or AOL. Well, I paid my own way and got docked 3 days' pay by the company that I was with to go to my first internet marketing conference.
Mm-hmm.
And I came back and I wrote a report, a sales report, not a report on the conference. And I tested with $70 worth of ads on CompuServe
Mm-hmm.
and sold $1,250 worth of product. So I went to the head of the company and I showed him this. And the response was, if you want to play on the computer, do it in your own time. We have a mailing. We have mailings that have to get out.
Oh my gosh.
Have you got that brochure done yet? And I got docked the 3 days that I went to the event. Plus I paid
Wow.
for it myself.
We're about out of time, Emerson.
Yeah,
We
we
got
are.
about 1 minute left. And that's an amazing story, ladies and gentlemen. Be sure and share this show with others because there's a lot of people out
Yes.
there that need to hear this information. And, a lot of the other shows do not provide the type of information we do. We really appreciate you watching us because our show has continued to grow and we're very honored for that. And as we always like to close a show, we hope and pray that you and your loved ones are healthy, happy, and safe. We hope and pray that you're enjoying life to the fullest. And to do that, the starting point is to love yourself first, then you can love others. And as Donald likes to say, be sure and give yourself grace and mercy. And
Yes.
just be open-minded. Look to the love and abundance of life has to offer because you're entitled to that. On behalf of Emerson, Brantley, and myself, we're so glad you tuned in. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.